Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson, and today I'm going to be looking at Raccoon Robbers. Now, I'm always on the lookout for fun family-weight games to play when my family comes over and they're really not into gaming. When I saw this one, I thought it looked nice, and then I saw the back of the box and saw that it had kind of 3D houses. I knew I had to try it. Now, the theme of this one is that you want to be the first Don Raccoon to reach the golden trash can, as raccoons are always on the lookout for the best leftover food. Now, the gameplay is pretty straightforward. It's going to be a race to the finish line. On your turn, you're either going to be playing cards to move up one of your young raccoons up a house, or play cards to have one of your raccoons leap from the house and move your Don Raccoon forward. Now, there is some take that in this game, which I normally don't like, but we'll kind of see how this works in here. So, will this game be a winner of the race, or should it just be left in the trash? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and I'll come back with my final thoughts on Raccoon Robbers. So here's Raccoon Raider set up for 4 players. Place the house bonuses on the red and blue houses depending on the number of players. Next, set up the racetrack, starting with the wall and ending with the golden trash can. You can set it up however you want, as there are 13 small single fields and 5 larger common fields. The number of common fields can be altered to make the game more or less cutthroat. Each player will place the raccoon boss on the wall and a young gang member in front of each house. Each player gets 1 card swap token and takes 4 cards from the draw pile. Now, the goal of the game is to be the first player to get the raccoon boss to the golden trash can. You'll be doing this by playing cards to move your young raccoons up the houses, and when you remove the young raccoons, you'll be able to move your raccoon boss the number of spaces forward as the number beside where your young raccoon came from. So on your turn, you can do one of 2 actions. You're either going to play cards to climb up and or be mischievous, or you can leap off the house and advance your raccoon boss. At the start of your turn, you must pick one house. The action you will do can only be at this house. All movement must be at this house, and you cannot split movement between houses in a single turn. If you decide to play cards on your turn to move your young raccoons, you must play cards that match the house you have chosen. Red cards for the red house, etc. You can play as many cards as you want, but they must be for the same house. And if you do play several cards on your turn, you may move your young raccoon up to the total number of arrows. Now, there are 3 types of cards that affect your raccoon. Single arrow cards, which move your raccoon up 1 space. Double arrow cards, which only move your raccoon up 2 spaces if your raccoon is the lowest raccoon in that house, or they're outside the house. If you play a double arrow card and this is not the case, it just counts as a single arrow. And finally, there are gray cards. They work like normal cards with single or double arrows, but can be played on any house. You can, in addition or instead of moving your raccoon, you can play mischief cards, and they are gray in color and have arrows that point down instead of up. When these are played, you'll move an opponent's raccoon, but again, only in the house that you picked at the start of your turn. These mischief cards are played after you have played all your upward movement cards on your raccoons. When your raccoon has finished moving, if they are in a common space, which can hold up to 4 raccoons, nothing happens. If you end your movement in a single space and there is already a raccoon in that space, you push that raccoon down 1 space. And if that raccoon ends up in a single space that is also occupied, then that occupant gets pushed down a level. This continues until a raccoon is either pushed into a common space or off the building. Instead of playing cards for movement, you can instead remove one of your raccoons from a house they are on and return them to the space in front of the house to move your raccoon boss. To do this, you must play 2 movement cards that match the house color that you picked at the start of your turn and move your young raccoon off the house. The space that the raccoon leapt from will have a number beside it. Move your raccoon boss forward that many steps. The steps on the racetrack work the same way as the houses. A single space can only hold 1 raccoon, and if after your movement you end up on an occupied single space, then you push the current occupant back 1 space. The common spaces can hold any number of raccoons. At the end of your turn, discard your cards and draw 2 from the draw pile. There are special tokens in the game. Each player has a card swap token. Once per game, you can discard any number of cards from your hand and redraw, then take your turn as normal, and then discard your swap token. The 2 bonuses at the top of the building go to the player who had last advanced one of the young raccoons to the top of the house, so these bonuses can change hands during the game. The game ends when one player gets the raccoon boss to the golden trash can, the game ends immediately, and they are the winner. Let's get back to see what I thought about Raccoon Robbers. Theme and components. The theme of this one is fun and is approachable. Raccoons running up the houses and chasing after the prime garbage just makes sense. The mechanisms may not make thematic sense, but they're simple enough to explain in relation to the overall idea of a race. And it works. So although not all tied together with the theme, I would say the theme is fun and enjoyable. For the components, they're top notch. The houses just look so cool, and they work very well. They're just at the right angle, and the wells are just deep enough that I never had a raccoon fall out, and they stayed pretty well in their positions. The raccoons themselves are cute. I'm not a big raccoon person, but you do have to apply the stickers, and I would have loved to have the young raccoons be stickered on both sides like the boss raccoons, but that's just minor. The cards are good quality, and I like the art on them. Now, I do have one very minor nitpick about the cards. I do wish the Mischief cards were a different color. I understand why they're gray, because you can play them on any house, but I do wish they stood out a bit more. You know, having the card arrows printed only at the top of the cards does make it a little easier to see which wild cards go up versus a Mischief card, but I just would have liked one more indicator on those cards. But overall, the game has a cute, approachable look that works extremely well. So let's go on to the gameplay. As you saw from the overview, this is a simple game. You play cards to either move up one of your raccoons, or you play 2 cards to move your raccoon boss. And it works very well. It's an easy, welcoming game with very little rules overhead. Now, that being said, there are a few things that were not as obvious as I would have hoped to when I was explaining the rules. The double arrow cards are only double arrow cards if you start your turn either outside the house, or you're the lowest raccoon in the house. Also, the fact that you do all your movement, then you knock people back. So you do all your movement first, and then you just move your raccoon to where you ultimately end up. You don't play a card, knock someone back, play another card, etc. Also, your Mischief cards can only be played after you finished all your movement cards. The fact that you can only play matching house cards to leap, and kind of the leap wasn't automatic. And those cards you play to leap could not both be wild movement cards. Only a maximum of 1 could be wild at any time when you play that. And the 4-player bonus tile. If you have it when you move your boss raccoon, you move the the raccoon that's in last place as well. If that's you, you get an extra movement. Now, for players that are more experienced with games, these are trivial things at best. But explaining it to people who have not played a lot of games was a little different. You play movement cards and you move up your total number of arrows, unless you play a double arrow, in which case it depends on whether you know where you are when you play that double arrows. And if you play a double arrow that wouldn't make you in last place anymore, well, they still all apply. Again, it's not a game breaker, but with such a simple rule set, I felt like I spent about as much time teaching the exceptions as I did explaining the base rules. For the gameplay itself, I enjoyed it for the most part. The takedown aspect of the game is not a game breaker. It's definitely a take down the leader type of move. If you're about to win and your raccoon is on the top spot of the building, people will be coming after you to take you down a few pegs before your next move. But I never felt it was overly punishing. It's not too difficult to get back up a house, of course, as long as you have some cards in your hand, in a turn or two. And you were not restricted as to which house to leap from to do any particular movement on the raccoon boss thing. So I wasn't overly bothered by the take that. So would I recommend this game? I think for families or people looking for a nice, light, approachable game, yes, I would. I really like the look of this game. The components are top notch, and those elevated buildings just add a little something to the game. The rules are easy enough to explain for the most part. I found my plays, even with 4 players, the game was over pretty quick, like 20 to 30 minutes. I also like the decisions I was making. Do I push my raccoon just a few more spaces, or do I leap now? And which house do I go up? The green house definitely has the higher numbers, but the red and blue houses, if I can get to the top, give me the bonus. Often those cards, the decisions are going to be based on your cards, but it's still enjoyable. For the negatives, I do wish the rules were a bit clearer. For example, when you play Mischief cards after your movement, if you end your movement and you move the person directly above you down, who gets pushed down? Is it you or the person you just played the Mischief card on? I also was not a big fan of the 2-player game. There are special rules for that. You play with only 2 houses and you play with off colors. Definitely play it with a full complement of 4 to get the most out of this game. Overall, though, I'm going to give this game a 7 out of 10. I found the look of the game to be enjoyable, combined with a simple rule set makes this game I could easily see myself pulling off the shelf as a welcoming game. If I have a bunch of experienced gamers over at the table, this is not coming to the table as it doesn't offer enough depth of gameplay. But with family, it's light enough, but it still gives me enough to think about on my turn that I enjoyed my plays. And that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.